The European Union will start collecting tariffs on billions of euro worth of US imports on April 15th in response to President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminium. Speaking in Luxembourg, the EU Trade Commissioner said Europe would keep all options on the table regarding last week's reciprocal tariffs, despite Taoiseach Simon Harris warning that any move to hit US tech companies would be an extraordinary escalation.
Europe is continuing to mull its response as markets plummet. Member States will vote on Wednesday on a list of tariffs hitting US exports in retaliation for President Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium. The Commission's keeping its counsel on the reciprocal tariffs, but is calling relentlessly for negotiation. In Norway, the Commission President highlighted an offer Brussels has been making to the administration dating back to February.
We have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
In Luxembourg, her trade commissioner said he'd spent hours telling his US counterparts that the EU could reduce tariffs to 0 on a range of goods if the US agreed to do the same.
Beyond automotives, we are talking about chemicals, pharmaceuticals, rubber and plastic, machinery, and I would say rest of industrial products.
Mr. Šefčovič said all the EU's retaliatory weapons would remain on the table. France in particular has called for the EU's so-called anti-coercion instrument to be deployed, and that could see tariffs slapped on intellectual property, meaning big tech.
N'exclure aucune option.
We must not exclude any option on goods, on services, and open the European toolbox, which is very comprehensive and can also be extremely aggressive.
The Taoiseach appeared to rule that out.
If you were to get into that space, it would be an extraordinary escalation at a time when we must be working for de-escalation. It is in many ways the nuclear option if you start talking about the use of the anti-coercion instruments and the likes. So what we need to do here is step by step, in a measured way, consider how best to respond. And I'm very clear from my engagement with multiple European counterparts and our ongoing engagement with the Commission that the majority view is certainly not in that space.
On April 15th, the EU will start collecting some billions of euro in tariffs on US imports in response to President Trump's steel and aluminium tariffs, with a further round of tariffs being collected on May 15th.
Well, Tony joins us now from Brussels. Tony, that idea floated by Ursula von der Leyen of 0 tariffs, how seriously should that be taken?
It's certainly something that Maroš Šefčovič has been pushing, and indeed EU officials were mentioning this last week during a briefing for journalists. Essentially, Maroš Šefčovič in his press conference this afternoon was saying, look, both sides, the Europeans and the Americans, should take a fresh look at problems with global trade which they share, the diagnoses of which they share as well, such as an overcapacity in certain quarters, the whole race for leadership in semiconductors, in rare minerals and so on. In that spirit, the two sides could get together and, rather than seeing reciprocity as a way of pushing tariffs up, you go in the opposite direction and try and bring tariffs down to 0, which would be beneficial for both sides. Now, essentially, he's saying, he's made this argument to Howard Lutnick and Jameson Greer, the Commerce and Trade Secretaries, respectively. They're not ready yet to bite on that particular offer, but it's still going to be on the table, and in the hope that cooler heads prevail with the turmoil in the markets. Nevertheless, they're going to publish this list of 99 pages worth of US products that they're going to hit in retaliation for the steel and aluminium tariffs, and they're hoping again that will perhaps give the Americans pause once they start to see the effect of those tariffs on US products.
OK, Tony Connolly in Brussels, thanks indeed for that.